Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. Today we're going to be taking a look at another heavily viewer requested weapon, the Grineer Handcannon, the Brakk. Now the Brakk was introduced into the game with the Gradivus Dilemma event as rewards for the Grineer winning the event, and was eventually re-released into the game as a drop for the Grineer assassins, the Gustrak 3. Now while the Brakk cannot be directly farmed, you can either run Grineer invasions until you get marked for the G3 and hope that they come for you, or you have to run either the standard or nightmare versions of the trial, the Law of Retribution, and kill the G3 on the hijack parts of the second stage. So what do you actually get when you manage to eventually farm the Brakk? Well, you get a weapon that does 150 damage a shot, with the majority 67.5 in the form of impact, 37.5 in puncture, and 45 as slash, which is one of the hardest hitting secondaries per shot. It also comes with a pretty average 15% critical chance, 200% multiplier, and also a fairly average 10% status. The Brakk also comes with a pretty decent fire rate of 5 rounds a second, as well as fantastically fast reload speed of 1 second. It also comes with the joint highest pellet count of all of the shotguns, with 10 pellets per shot. The Brakk isn't immune to a few issues, however, primarily is its magazine size of 5, which is by no means very high at all, but since the Brakk has a 1 second reload anyway, it's not really that much of an issue. Since it also comes with a standard 210 round ammunition limit that most secondary weapons have, the 5 round magazine actually makes the Brakk amazingly ammo efficient, which actually works in its favour. In addition to this, the Brakk does have a pretty high recoil, and the spread on the pellets is huge, meaning that medium range accuracy does suffer a lot. However, the main downside to this weapon is that between around sort of 15 to 20 meters, the damage from each pellet in the Brakk does start to fall off, which means that the high recoil and spread quite frankly don't matter at all, since you're not going to be engaging at ranges where that's actually really going to be a problem. This was a change that did need to be done, as well as, well, I mean the Brakk was ridiculously good over short range and medium range, but for some reason it's not a change that's been extended to all hand cannons, which is slightly bizarre. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Brakk. Now it comes with a V and a dash polarity as standard, however we're going to add 4 former to the weapon, which is going to be another 3 Vs and a dash. Now we've got 5 mods that are remaining the same between the 3 builds: Hornet Strike for damage, Barrel Diffusion for multi-shot, Lethal Torrent for fire rate as well as the multi-shot, Pistol Gambit for crit chance, and Target Cracker for crit damage. Now for our Grineer build, we're going to go with Radiation Toxic, which seems to be the elemental combo I'm favouring at the moment for the Grineer, which is Primed Heated Charge and Convulsion, and Pathogen Rounds. And for the Corpus, Convulsion Deep Freeze for the Magnetic, and Primed Heated Charge for the heat damage. Now, I've had a few questions about using Primed Heated Charge rather than using the Pathogen Rounds, and the reason for using this is that Primed Heated Charge just does so much damage. Like, if you think about it, 165% extra heat damage, this only does 90%. I know it's bonused to some extent, but the Primed Heated Charge gets no negatives almost across the board. It gets a slight negative on some of the shields of the Corpus, but we've got Magnetic that's going to deal with that anyway, plus the actual impact damage of the weapon. But I mean, if you look at the numbers, the heat damage is almost as much as a full elemental combo. This is why I've been favouring the Primed Heated Charge quite a lot recently, even on the Corpus build. I just find that it just does so much damage. It is just, you've got to have it on there. And for the Void, Convulsion Pathogen Rounds for corrosive, Primed Heated Charge for the heat damage. And obviously, if you want to do your corrosive projection build, just switch things around a bit, and there you've got the viral and heat, which the corrosive and projection build really favours. So on to my recommendation, and would I say the Brakk is worth the time, effort and resources needed to max it out? And the answer to that is not something that should come as a surprise to anybody. Absolutely yes, it's worth doing. Put simply, the Brakk is the king of the short range secondaries. At close range there is simply no other secondary weapon that even comes close to doing the damage that the Brakk puts out. For the longest time the Brakk was a weapon, much like the Sinnoh Gamma Core, that everyone took to the forums to ask for the nerf, and honestly it did need it. However, much like the Sinnoh nerf, it limited the effectiveness of the Brakk, but it hasn't stopped it from being a top tier weapon. Now I want to address something here that people have talked to me about in game, and that is fire rate mods more than lethal torrent on the Brakk. And all I can say really is don't do it. The Brakk with lethal torrent already fires faster than you can click. Further fire rate mods, while they'll look like big numbers on Warframe Builder, will do absolutely nothing since you can't even fire the weapon that fast. Lethal torrent is already more than an extra fire rate, and as I said, even with that on, you just can't fire fast enough to even fully take advantage of that extra fire rate. Now I know that people are going to ask about the crit build, and the reason why I've done that, and the reason is that the crit mods do actually make the Brakk do more damage when it crits than a pure elemental build. When I ran the numbers for this, I was actually surprised that with just a 15% critical chance, it is actually going to do more damage than without them. However, and this is a pretty big however, this is definitely not the only decent way to mod the Brakk. The pure elemental build will also work fantastically. Let me explain that just a little bit. When the crit build on the Brakk does crit, it gets a decent amount more damage than the elemental. However, it is solely reliant on the RNG as to whether it's going to crit or not. Whereas the elemental build provides reliability, since it's always going to do the same damage whether or not it crits. So in terms of building the Brakk, it kind of depends if you want a slightly more unreliable but have a sort of heavier hitting weapon, or you want the sort of the old faithful that's always going to perform no matter the circumstances. So in essence, a hand cannon that hits like an absolute truck. When you're up close and personal, it looks great, sounds great, it's great fun to use at the expense of the range. It's absolutely worth a former and worth trying to get your hands on, one of the top secondary weapons in the game, easily. Now onto a quick couple of things. Apologies for the lack of suit up episodes recently. Every time I come to do them, I feel that there's something else I need to test and try before I get the episode done. However, next week it should be back again. And the same goes for rank up videos. I know they're not my most viewed series, but it's not something that really concerns me. I want them on my channel for the newer players that might not have done all the tests yet, so they have something to reference if they get stuck. It will be back, maybe even this afternoon, so keep an eye out for that. Now quickly onto the topic of live streaming. I would love your guys' input on that. Last Wednesday I streamed for about 6 hours, and after some technical difficulties I think it went pretty well. I am seriously considering doing a bit more streaming, maybe once a week or so, just after, you know, if we get a new weapon or something. So would you guys like to see me stream, you know, an extra, you know, once a week or a little bit more than that? I would love to know your opinion. I love the chance to interact with you all a bit more directly, plus to play with you guys in game, talk about new weapons and stuff, and just answer your questions. And I mean, I'm actually going to be streaming this evening while leveling up the Karak Wraith, if we get it this evening, that is. So stay tuned for the announcement on my channel and on Twitter about when I'm streaming. But I would definitely appreciate your feedback on the streaming side of things. And yeah, it would just be amazing to know how you feel on that. As always guys, many thanks for watching. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.